Three, two, one. All right. Welcome to my channel this time around. I got my good buddy who's down in South Carolina. You don't have your whiskey today, do you?
No, I had a little bit of that last night. I'm just on some PBR over here today. So
I got you. And we're talking, of course, about my friend Charles Anderson from the Lone Wolf podcast. He and I have been the guest of a few other programs. Charles did one last evening. I did one last weekend. I actually turned one down this morning, Charles, because we had this thing already booked. So I was like, no, sorry, got to go on with Charles. And I guess I'm in demand. I don't know. But how you doing this morning? Okay?
doing pretty good. We're finally getting the fall weather in South Carolina, which I've been looking forward to for a while because I'm tired of hot and swampy.
I hear that. The same thing in D.C. I'm tired of swampy up there, and I don't even live there.
Exactly.
But I got the swamp is still here in Florida, though, unfortunately. And we'll have it probably maybe up until like November 1st or so. And I hear there's some kind of front that might come down next week and cool it off like 2 degrees. So I'm hoping for that front, you know. So last night, big news, shocking news. Actually, wasn't all that shocking because she's been hanging on for a long time. And I believe that she probably should have retired before we got to this point. But unfortunately, Ruth Bader Ginsburg did pass away, Supreme Court Justice, 87 years old. Pancreatic cancer, I believe, is the cause, or at least it was listed as the main cause. She's been in and out of the hospital for years. And I think, you know, we really need to start looking at litmus testing age at a certain point, both for certain offices like the presidency and the Supreme Court. I mean, these are important jobs where I think you need, you know, clear-mindedness. And if you're old and you're healthy, I'm good. You know, I'm good with you. But I think maybe some kind of a test for mental acuity, or, you know, if you've got severe health conditions, then maybe you should do the right thing and step down. I don't know how you feel about that, but what's your take on that, Charles?
Well, honestly, and I said this last night, I think we found what one of the main focal points is going to be going into November between the two campaigns. It's going to be a way to avoid promoting good policy because they really can't do that anyway, but
Right.
They can, again, play on your fears. And this time I think we're going to see a repeat of what the Republicans did over Antonin Scalia's seat in 2016, except this time it'll be the Democrats for Justice Ginsburg's seat, okay? But I'm like you. I'm not for the Democrats' proposal of expanding the Supreme Court. I don't like that idea. But one thing I am open to the idea of is not having these lifetime positions anymore.
Yeah.
And the reason why, and I've actually heard a compelling case for this, is because, of course, when the Founding Fathers created that system, people didn't live as long as they do today. And even though the life expectancy is going down for most average Americans today, we're still a lot of people living 60s, even into 90s or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And back at that time period, if you were getting into your 60s or 70s, you were doing very, very, very well. It was not that common. It was a different era. So that being said, I'm completely open to that idea of, you know, just like putting term limits on Congress, I'm fine with putting term limits on Supreme Court justices as well. May be a lot longer than, say, a congressional or president term limit, but I would say if you've been in there 15 years, you've served your job. It's time for potentially a new one. That way it's able to reflect where the country's at more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone's not going to be hanging around like the dinosaurs, basically, in a completely different era. And without a doubt, some of these justices that were there don't reflect a lot of where the country is at today. But without a doubt, we got our new issue for the campaigns, in my opinion. I think if I had to take a wild guess, we're probably going to hear Roe v. Wade somewhere around 500,000 to 1,000,000 times between now and election day.
Yeah. 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 That's a good point. You know what I was thinking about though, Charles, today is the Supreme Court is supposed to be, it is supposed to be a neutral body. It is
Yes.
supposed to be the arbiter, like when you come before the judge, and here are your ultimate judges, right, on the Supreme Court. And they're deciding a case. And they do it, all of them now, whether you're a lefty judge or a righty judge, or you think you're appointing a lefty judge and they end up, well, it's usually the other way around. The Republicans are complaining about John Roberts and so forth. He's not really a conservative judge. And you hear all the time now, we need conservative justices on the bench. We need progressive judges at the circuit court. I don't think the founders were thinking that the courts were going to be politicized, and
No.
They're completely politicized now. And I think in order for us to get any kind of satisfaction in a ruling coming down, which again, we can all talk about how the Constitution right now, it's akin to toilet paper, okay? Because it's a document. It's everybody says this is constitutional, this is unconstitutional, but they're all interpreting from their side of the argument. You know, they're either you hear are they strict constructionalists, or do they believe in a living, breathing document? So
yeah,
I don't know. That institution right now, to me, is in peril, because then you've got district attorneys, you've got all these people all over the country with a hardcore political bent, and they're not interested in justice. What they're interested in is getting their agenda through. And a lot of the reactions, of course, I saw on Twitter, of course I'm going to see those, was like, oh, crap. Now Trump's going to, he's going to get to appoint a conservative justice. And I don't think he's going to do it. I don't think it's just politically, I don't think it's a wise move for him to do it before the election, but maybe they will. What's your take on the Supreme Court as an institution right now?
Well, honestly, I think it being the Supreme Court is a good supreme reflection of our regular court system. It's broken.
Yeah.
Our regular judicial system is without a doubt broken from things that have taken place over the year. Our war on drugs and these are things that I've pointed out. Do I believe that there's this war from the police to go after, poor people or minorities? No. But do I admit the fact that they probably end up more likely to get jail sentences as opposed to, say, white guys or rich folks in general? Absolutely they do.
Yeah.
Because of the way our judicial system works. See, and that's what most people don't realize when they say, well, look at all the black men sitting in jail. Yeah, but who made that conviction to put them in jail? See, the cop just arrested you, but the judge is the one who convicted you, right?
Right.
So that being said, the Supreme Court is just as broken. You're absolutely right. This was supposed to be the no man's land, the neutral ground where if there was a debacle about something being constitutional, it would go before the Supreme Court, and someone who's got no dog in the fight and is just there to do the right thing is going to make the decision. Just like our court system was supposed to be doing this entire time. It wasn't supposed to matter whether you were white or black, rich or poor. It was just about, did you do it or did you not? Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
If you did, then this is what's going to come with it.
Yep.
But now you're absolutely correct. It is utterly politicized, and it's going to be politicized this time, because remember when Antonin Scalia died, the Republicans tried to make the claim why they would not hear out Obama's appointee. They tried to say that because, well, it's standard tradition that no president would nominate someone this close to an election or blah, 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 right? You would wait to see what the election says and then we'll make a – but no, he appointed someone, except they held that nomination hearing off for like a year, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow that appointee, and I believe it was a woman, to come before the committee and be heard for like a year in front of the Senate.
Yeah.
But now breaking news since then, Mitch McConnell says they will get Trump's appointee in. So you held that one for a year, even though at the time Democrat president made an appointee, and you wouldn't let that one go through.
Right.
Okay? Whether you think she would have been a great justice or not, that's not the point here. The point is how politicized we're making the Supreme Court. So you wouldn't allow that nominee to come forward for a year, and then the next president gets elected and nominates someone else, and you skyrocket them through as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Now we're little under 2 months from election, really almost close to a month away from election.
Right.
And now Trump's wanting to nominate someone, and Mitch McConnell's wanting to just skyrocket them through. That way there's no chance of Joe Biden winning and appointing someone else.
Right.
So without a doubt, this is going to be used as Republicans saying this is our chance to get a Supreme Court that can really make a difference. So that's going to gin up their base to try to get right-wing agendas through. Right. Likewise, people were probably very unenthused to go vote for Joe Biden, especially on the left. But now that they fear that a Trump-appointed Supreme Court justice could be done again.
Yeah.
And that means he would have appointed 3 at this point to the court. Now there's going to be a lot of people who probably know Joe Biden's not going to fix health care. He's not going to bring good foreign policy. He's not going to fix the middle class. He's not going to do anything with Social Security. He's going to prop up Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, but at least we won't get another Trump Supreme Court justice. So maybe I need to hold my nose and go vote for him. And you know that the Biden campaign is sitting there just fondling themselves right now going, oh, yes, this is great. This is wonderful. We've got something we can pull at their fears and might win this election for sure now. Yeah.
Yeah, you make a really good point there. They don't have anything to run on at all. They just don't. There's nothing there. I don't care if I watch a few progressives on Twitter. And they're like, well, AOC is one of them. Well, we're going to be able to push Joe in our direction. You're not pushing Joe anywhere. Joe's come out and he's done speeches where he's actually strung a few words together. This is obviously another huge issue. And again, the media, incredible how they're just turning a blind eye to this man and how he's just, I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg is probably in better shape right now, right this moment, than Joe Biden is running for president. I'm sorry, I know that's harsh, but here's a guy who can't navigate the English language, and people keep sending me these clips, and they're mashed together, and then they're actually not mashed together. They're just one clip, and he's in very rough shape. But as you mentioned, like you said about Roe v. Wade, the people that are pro-aborts, as I like to call them, this is their holy grail. They hold on to this issue, and nuclear war could be upon us. An asteroid could be heading this way.
Yep. But
to them, abortion is the most important thing. And I tend to be kind of pro-life, and I'm flabbergasted at the energy here. And I'm not against first trimester. I'm not against it per se. When we get in Tulsi Gabbard, I'm kind of with her. Third trimester, that's like barbarism. That's real bad crap. And most Americans are right there, by the way. That's not a radical view that I have. Even people that say they're Democrats and so forth, if you ask them, most of them are going to say, but a lot of them, because they're so afraid of that's going to be the slippery slope backward. We're going to go back to coat hangers, and I'm just like, whoa, you're not going to go back to coat hang. You're just making and so you're right about the fear factor. It's just a lot of fear, and there are going to be a lot of suburban women, a lot of people who feel as though, hey, it's my body, my right, except when it comes to wearing a mask. It's not your body or your right at that point, but it's certainly your body and your right in this situation. And it's an issue that's so entrenched. And there's no creative thinking around at least Bill Clinton, who obviously at this stage, he's a scoundrel, but he did coin a phrase that I think makes a lot of sense. He said safe, legal, and rare. You know, it was
Yeah.
I'm sure it was focus tested, but it was a good statement because it said, okay, we don't want to advocate so much for this as we allow it as a necessary evil kind of a thing. And I think that's what's missing in this discussion. It's either it's just such a cut and dry thing. And you're right. It's an issue that Biden has now. And he'll put it out there. He'll be like, I've advocated my whole career for this. I don't know. I think if you go back in time, you're going to find that Joe Biden had some pro-life enzymes in his early career.
Oh, yes.
As did Al Gore, as did Bill Clinton. You can go back, and when that became politically not as expedient as just going along with the Overton window, they drifted the other way, and now it's the Holy Grail. And there are a lot of Republicans, too, that are pro-choice as well. So, again, people are going to say, you know, the Donald Trump, who's out there and trying to court like the hardcore conservatives, evangelicals, and so forth. It's a good strategy. It's worked for other Republicans, and I'm sure he'll just stick with that. But we're living in a brave new world, my friend, and anything is possible, even with a guy who, again, might not be as healthy as Ruth Bader Ginsburg is right this moment.
Hey, he might not be healthy, but there's one thing about it, Dave. The guy knows what's trendy today. He knows the best movies and the best music.
Are you gonna do the recap on the little Spanish song, that little number that Joe is even showing off his Kamala Harris moves there? I was really that was something, man. That like tops Joe Rogan right there. That was good stuff.
I think this was on Franco's show last week we were on, but I told him, I said, look, I said, if this doesn't win over votes with the Hispanic community, next week we're going to see Kamala Harris come out salsa dancing to the mariachi band.
Yeah, well, I saw an endless clip of Kamala Harris. They kept running it. It was a short little clip of her jumping off of a chartered plane, and she had sneakers on. And she's kind of, you know, certain aspects of Kamala's physique were being displayed a little bit, you know. And I'm thinking, hey, you know, this is a way to get support. You know, maybe there are a lot of guys out there, they look at Biden, the old creepy man. They think, oh, but hey, we've got Kamala over here, and she's not half bad to look at. So, you know, I'm just because obviously Kamala, I would say Kamala is more attractive than Mike Pence. So
yeah.
So I'm thinking that maybe, and I'm playing kind of like devil's advocate here because you and I talked about this. We're gonna try to have some fun here because there's nothing left. I mean, 2020 is the apocalypse, so we might as well have a little bit of fun. People are voting for the most superficial of things that, you know, if Kamala goes on some hip radio show and she can rap or she can talk to somebody and use her Jamaican charm that she has and so forth, maybe she's gonna court some votes that she wouldn't ordinarily get. And anyway, people are already calling this the Harris Biden administration, even Joe himself.
Yeah. Without a doubt, people are voting for a lot of things for the wrong reason. I believe it was the comedian's name escapes me at the moment, but if it comes to me, I'll mention his name later on. But Eddie Griffin, that's his name. Eddie Griffin, stand-up comedian, talked about when he went to vote for Obama. He apparently had a fascination with Michelle Obama. And, of course, maybe this was just for stand-up, but he said right in his skit, he said, look, I didn't vote for Obama because of him. I voted for Obama because of her.
Yeah.
So if that's what you're going out to vote for, I mean, yeah, without a doubt, there's obviously some people who just genuinely believe it's time that a woman got into the leadership role, and I have no issue with that. That's why I'd supported Tulsi Gabbard during the primary season.
Right.
But at the same time, voting for a woman just because, it's more eye candy for me to peer at than an old white man,
Yeah.
That's like the same reason as why my mom didn't go vote for Hillary Clinton last time around. And she had, now look, there was a million reasons why you didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton, right?
Yes.
But she picked perhaps the worst one I've ever heard. Seriously. Now, my mom, this being a woman now, okay, so you wouldn't think you would hear this, but she told me point blank, I just don't think that being the leader of a country is just a good job for a woman.
Ah.
I was like, what?
Ooh.
That is the reason you're not going to go vote for. It's got nothing to do with the fact she's gotten us into all these wars. It's got nothing to do with the fact she's is crooked, you know, as a curvy road, okay? It's got nothing to do with the fact she's just a horrible, evil person. You just don't think a woman should be the president. That's got to be the worst answer I've heard yet.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, voting for a woman just because you think she's sexy to look at is just as bad, really. You know, I mean, sure, if you want to enjoy looking at them, that's great, but there's more to it than that. You know, I'll say this: I didn't think Ron Paul was much to look at, but he had good policy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but we're living, you know, I was talking about this before we went on, and they're telling me, Dave, you got to understand, you got to embrace this culture thing. You got to understand that it's pop culture, and you got to appeal to that. That's why you got Kanye out there, for instance. He's just riding on the whole pop culture train. I mean, what does Kanye stand for? Well, you know, we know he's anti-abortion. We do know that, but he's a rap star. He's a cultural phenomenon. He's a rich guy who is eccentric and strange, and people are fascinated by that. And they're going to, you know what? I like Kanye West, and I'm going to go cast my vote for him. Well, what's his deal on foreign policy? I don't know, but I'm sure he'll do the right thing. And it's like, what? You know, what? What do you mean? You got people bombing countries over there. You got proxy wars. What's a proxy war? Is that glue? What is that? You know? So it's no, that's epoxy, not a proxy. I have to correct him. So you know, Kamala Harris, I mean, there's obviously a makeover going on with angry Kamala the cop right now. They're trying to make her softer, maybe a little sexier, maybe a little more appeal. Maybe she might have had a little bit of work done. Some people are saying the cheeks are a little different now than they were a few months ago. I don't know if it's true, but there have been some interesting side by side photographs. They get a lot riding. A lot of people, you know, you got to remember, Biden is, and they've even hinted around, oh, Biden's not going to, I mean, probably he's not going to even make it through the first term. He might not even make it to November 3rd. We don't know. So we have this contingency plan, and it's Kamala. Yep. And for a lot of people who are neoliberal and neoconservative, I might add, Kamala Harris to them is okay. She's okay because she puts people away in jail for long periods of time for having small amounts of marijuana and stuff on them. She's a real, I'm going to lay down the law. Of course, she's been going around telling everybody now that, you know, it's BLM time, and I'm going to be very accepting, in these riots, or I'm sorry, peaceful protests are going to go on for a long period of time, and I fully embrace and support them. That's not her track record. So again, if you know, people talk about dog whistles, you have a Biden and a Harris ticket. That's a big dog whistle to neoliberals and neoconservatives, people who are, you know, the never Trumper crew that is still out there, like, hey, I can vote for them. Wall Street's going to be great. And, you know, we're not going to see any drastic changes. Joe's going to keep the fracking going. I was really worried. He came out and said he's pro fracking. He's okay with coal, supposedly, or, you know, one quote he did say he was going to end fossil fuel, but he's not going to end fossil fuel.
He's going to do whatever the donors want.
Right. So,
but remember this.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is a lot more knowledgeable about what's popular with people than we think he is.
Yeah.
He's still got that special offer going on. that if for all the kids who come out to see him, he's got delicious cold popsicles.
Oh man. Despacito. We got to play some Despacito. You know, that's it. The cold popsicles. And what Charles is alluding to, people are going to be watching this video on my channel. You have to subscribe to the Lone Wolf podcast to get the full impact of Charles and his Joe Biden impersonation, which quite honestly, the other day physically made me laugh out loud. It wasn't just, you know, people write that gratuitously. I was sitting there going, this is great. Maybe we're both kind of taking a different tact at this point. We've tried to be serious. We've tried to yell at people to go vote for Joe Jorgensen for president. She's polling at about 1 or 2%, depending on what state you're in. Doesn't look like Joe's going to be the president. Same thing with Howie Hawkins. He's polling at less than 1% in the states that he's actually on the ballot in.
Yeah.
So it is kind of between Trump. It kind of, let's just be honest, kind of between, we talked about not doing a whole thing about Trump and Biden, but I think people, when they go to the polls, they can do the protest vote. I'm not vote shaming you if you go vote for, if you write Tulsi Gabbard's name in, whatever. Because it's just, you're saying that you're not, the duopoly is not going to get you. Same thing with voting for Jorgensen or Hawkins or Charles. What's that guy who's running as an independent?
Mark Charles.
What's his name?
Mark Charles.
Mark Charles. Thank you. A lot of people have been telling me about Mark Charles. He seems like he's singing one note from the hymnal. So I'm kind of like, okay, I get why you're running and stuff, but you have to kind of capture the imagination of more than just that one group of people who stood at Standing Rock and so forth. You need farmers, and you need electricians, and you need lawyers, and you need people to think to themselves, who is actually going to be able to do this, get into office, take on the Washington, people call it deep state establishment, military industrial complex, the thinking class, and although they don't think all that well. I don't know, Charles, what do you think about vote? I mean, we talk about just maybe casting a vote out of rebellion, but is that pointless?
No. I still say this. People can vote whichever way they want, honestly. I'm with you. I would like to see a Joe Jorgensen president over Biden or Trump. But that being said, I also realize that's going to be an awful tall hill to climb at this point. Considering where she's polling at right now, and considering where Gary Johnson was polling at least the last time around, and I'll be honest, I do like Jorgensen better than I like Gary Johnson. But
me too.
You know, that being said, the libertarians, the biggest problem with the third parties are they go into brumation. Or hibernation, however you want to put it, okay?
True.
After the presidential election is over, it's crickets.
Yeah.
I don't hear about them in any local elections. I don't hear about them running from any gubernatorial chairs. I don't hear about them in the Senate or the House. I only catch these rumblings of them around the time for the president.
Right.
And I'm not going to give the average American this much credit and say that they understand what I understand, and that is if you win the presidency and nothing else, you're dead in the water anyway.
Right.
Most people don't pay that much attention to politics. Most people are under the impression it's a waste of my time to vote third party for the president because it's such an uphill battle and you don't have the votes. Well, this is where you as a party need to start gaining the support. And how do you gain that support? You gain that support at the grassroots level. You gain it at the local level. So if you won town mayor as a libertarian and you did very well and you helped that town out, everybody in that town says, wow, things are a little bit better than they were before.
Right.
We didn't get this when we had a Republican or a Democrat in charge. How come?
Yeah.
So something great here. So now you're going to start to get that attention.
Yes.
Now you start to get more people focusing on, okay, so who are these libertarian folks out here, right?
Yeah.
You've got to get people. Now, the problem is, and I hear where people say, no, we need the change and we need it right now. I agree with you, but you also have to understand Rome was not built in a day.
Yeah.
And the Democrats and the Republicans have had over 150 years of perfecting their craft.
Yes.
Okay? So while we've realized the problems with the two-party system, the outsiders should have really been trying to build themselves up in local elections, in state elections, in congressional districts, in Senate races.
Yep.
And chipping away at the foundation that gives the Democrats and the Republicans all their power. Because even though the president can make all these executive orders, at the end of the day, the real power still falls over to Congress and the Senate.
Yes.
So if you had been chipping away at that base and really putting a lot more effort into that instead of just throwing all your eggs in the presidential basket, you could have done a lot more to really provide a better option at this point. But not many people seem to realize that fact. You know, we've all wondered why Jesse Ventura never ran for president. And there's a lot of speculation as to why. But I finally came across another clip where he was talking to Piers Morgan about running. This is a long time ago on CNN. And he actually mentioned something that I found very interesting. And he said, you can't just elect a different president. You've got to elect across the board. You've got to stop voting for Democrats and Republicans all across the board.
Yeah.
So he understands if you just get that third party president, you're going to get nothing. That's when the Democrats and the Republicans team up to screw you, and they'll screw the entire country to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
Ventura knows this because they tried to do it to him in Minnesota. So he won, did a lot of great things as the governor, right?
Yeah.
Towards the end, and they thought he was going to run for a re-election until he hit him with a curveball.
Yeah.
What they did to try to bury him was put a budget together that was more than the state could handle. In other words, they knew they were going to spend more money than they had, and it would put them into debt, and they would have a deficit.
Yeah.
They knew that. So he vetoed it.
Yep.
As a result, they overrode his veto. Why? Just to get back at him, to make it look like he was the irresponsible one, because all of a sudden the state was going to start having problems under his watch.
Yeah.
And so they did that, and then he threw the curveball and said, oh, I'm not running for re-election. So it was a Republican or a Democrat who got saddled with that anchor instead of him. So he actually did a smart thing, but that shows you the length the two parties will go to. So that is the biggest problem with the third party message, is people still see them as a wasted vote because they believe that there's just not enough people to vote third party. And in actuality, we haven't won enough people to third parties because we're only focusing really on that one race. Sure, we get different people in different areas of the country who try to make a go for it, but that's where, honestly, the parties as a whole need to really get behind it. And right now, you seem to see the most focus on the presidential elections. I say they need to put that focus on the local elections.
Right.
And the issue is where people say we don't have the time, we need to do it now. That may very well be true, but just because you don't have that time doesn't mean you can't follow the process the way you're going to have to do it to get things done. You've got to get people to understand why this is a better option than being a Democrat or a Republican. You've got to make that case. You've got to win them over to your side, and you're going to be fighting an uphill battle on these big national levels. That's why you got to start winning them at the grassroots level, where all that big donor money doesn't really get spent the same way.
Yeah.
That's your easiest level playing field to start on, and not many people look at it that way. And if it is too late for that process to drag itself out now, understand what's going to wind up happening. You're going to wind up with, in my opinion, a civil war in this country, because we're teetering on that edge right now. And honestly, the historical shot at Fort Sumter that started the Civil War could come in November if Trump looks like he won on election night, and then Biden gets more and more and more votes as the days roll in all of a sudden, up until the point they declare him the winner. That's going to start a serious riot in this country.
Oh yeah. And even, I would say, even if Trump wins, well, here's the thing. We've already heard from Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the different platforms that if, Trump hits 270 or whatever, and there are people out there that think Trump might landslide. I don't know if he will, and it's a possibility. They call it a red mirage. That's the term I've been hearing. And they're going to say, well, not so fast. Trump, we're not going to talk about it. We're just going to black it out. You'll have all the other alternative and more conservative sites. They're going to go crazy. And they're going to say, yeah, Trump won, Trump won. Trump, I think, will do a speech and he'll say, I won. And everybody in the news media will say, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. We're going to have to wait because we got all these. And let me just be clear about this, Charles. These mail-out ballots, I have to agree with the president and Tulsi Gabbard, for that matter, who just came out and said she's got legislation. She's writing a bill, and I love it. You can't just mail out ballots to people. The ballots don't have their name on them. These are ballots. These are like, hey, a box of blank ballots, and we're going to mail them out to people who may not even be registered to vote. They may not be in the country legally. They may not have a legal residence. They may not have any identification whatsoever. And by the way, this could go on for weeks. This happened in the district close to me here in Florida, where Debbie Wasserman Schultz is currently the congresswoman. And I'm hoping she gets beat by the Republican. I do not like her. And most people who are not part of the establishment, she might be public enemy number 1, 2, or 3. Depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
But ballots just mysteriously started showing up in old station wagons. There aren't a lot of station wagons on the highway anymore, brother. But for some reason, there were a lot of them in Broward County. And they had ballots, lots and lots of ballots in them, in boxes that suddenly showed up at polling places to be counted. All right. And lo and behold, guess who wins? Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That's the kind of politician you want running the country. And that would be, the bigger version of that would be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. If that's what you want running the country, based on that type of election, then we're not living in a republic. We're not living even in a democracy at that point. We're living in a third world banana republic style situation. And there's if we don't get a grasp on this, I actually said, don't send me a ballot, even though it would be kind of like an absentee ballot, would have my name on it and everything. I said, I will gladly risk my life and go to the polling place. I will put on my mask and I will go into the polling place and I will cast the vote, because there's no way that I'm going to be deprived of the physical vote in a situation where it seems as though there are a lot of voices in the media that are playing this up, like, hey, and you talk about civil war. You make a really good point. I mean, technically, I think we're kind of in a soft civil war to some degree, especially if you go to certain places in the country, certain large cities. And I'm not saying, I get chastised on Twitter because I said cities were burning, and somebody said, "Oh, it's not the entire city." I was like, okay, thanks for that. I mean, it's people look at anything you say, Charles, can be used against you in a court of Twitter. You know what I mean? It's like you say, well, I think it's bad that we're sending all these troops to the Middle East and we're not, and they'll come back with, oh, that's we do that. This is what we do. We're America. We're defending freedom. I'm like, we're not defending freedom. It has nothing to do with freedom, and those are typically the neocons that like to weigh in on those issues. And I like them about as much as I like the neoliberals, which is about zero. So to your point about what is coming and why it's coming, it is because we have a defective election system. It's completely defective. It's not the Russians, by the way. I'm just going to put it on this video. It's not Russia. If anything, it's us. We're the ones we're colluding. The parties are colluding, and mostly those on the left. I hate to throw everybody on the left under the bus, because I think there are progressives who are kind of outside that neoliberal bubble, who are also trying to get in, like they're trying to get into the trough as well and say, hey, look at my candidacy over here. And the neoliberals are doing the same thing to them too. They're, no, you're too progressive. We don't want Medicare for all. We don't want that. That's too extreme. So I feel for those people too, because they are outsiders to the same degree as somebody who's a libertarian or somebody who might come into the Republican Party as more of like a Thomas Massey or a Justin Amash character who's got their own way of doing things. And Charles, I don't know about you, but I know what you're talking about with third parties and building it from the ground up. But maybe Tulsi Gabbard was smarter than I originally thought when she talked about, you build an infrastructure and then I will come. For now, I'm going to continue to be a Democrat. And that was really disappointing to me. But I've always had this idea that you should run in these infrastructures as whatever the party is. If it's a Republican, you run as a Republican, but you have a list of things that you believe in. You carry the R. It's not false advertising. Say there's a couple of things that intersect with Republican ideas, all right? But the Republican Party has changed a lot over the years, as has the Democratic Party. What you may end up doing if you run at the grassroots is you may pull one of these parties in a more populist direction to get them away from the war machine, to get them away from Wall Street, to get them away from just this identity politics stuff or this tribal nonsense that they both tend to do, and that might be a solution. I mean, you need big numbers. I know the DSA tried to do that, and I'm not all that impressed with their organizing tactics, and they are getting beat by a lot of corporate cash, which I don't know how you fight it. You have to get in there to change all these campaign finance laws that favor incumbents and favor, hey, let's just get more lobbyists, let's get super PACs. It's an overhaul, and it's a big one that you got to do, man.
Well, you're right, except you've got a better chance at doing that, in all honesty, with the Republican Party than you do with the Democrat Party. Yeah. And the reason why, and if the Republicans figure out this is going to happen, keep in mind there was rumblings they were thinking about doing this because they got Donald Trump. Now, I think they're fairly satisfied with Trump at this point, so they may not pull this trigger. But the reason I say it's easier to do it with them versus the Democrats is because they don't have that superdelegate system that the Democrats have.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? It's votes, and whoever wins, wins.
Right.
But with the Democrats, even though they postponed the superdelegates till the second round of voting, they were clever enough to coordinate it to stop the outsider. And there were a lot of Republicans who'd still probably far rather it have been a Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, or one of those type people as opposed to Donald Trump. So if they really want to take their party back, they'll either institute that superdelegate system themselves or they will pull off the same strategy we saw this time around, which is load it full of each other. We'll prop each other up. We'll make sure we take them down. And I think that the lesson they will also learn, even though they're covering Donald Trump still today, that's because he's the president. I don't think they're going to give so much free press to the wild cards, because that is a big thing that really propelled Donald Trump was how much they talked about the guy. They thought they were harming him. In actuality, they really helped him out a lot.
Yeah.
But going back to something that you said earlier, and I'll refer back to one of my Joe Biden ads. You mentioned that there were station wagons coming up with ballots, and that's very sketchy to say the least, right?
Yeah.
So if in this election cycle we see a lot of vehicles turning up to polling places with ballots, and it just so happens that those vehicles tend to be ice cream trucks. Something suspicious, right?
Yeah.
Needless to say, there may have been a lot of free popsicles given out to little kiddies for their votes.
Oh, man. I'm glad you're on the show because, again, people should just tune in because you never know like we'll have to just go off on tangents, and the popsicles is again, you got to subscribe to the Lone Wolf podcast to get the full ice cream truck popsicle treatment.
Full disclosure, by the way, the voice wasn't as great as it is in my other videos because it's a lot harder for me to just jump octaves like that and switch back and forth. So, to go from my regular, it takes a little bit of practice. I can't just go from this voice straight to that one like that. So.
You got a helium tank in there or something that we don't know about?
No, if I sat here for about 30 seconds and really just thought and just kind of calm my throat down, I could do it. But just going straight, because I have a really deep voice.
Yeah.
And that's something that Reed said when he first heard it. Reed Coverdale, he said, "What did you pitch the audio higher? I'm surprised you can get your voice up that high."
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with like Trace Atkins over here, and then all of a sudden he becomes like Mickey Mouse. So, I mean, hey, pretty good little musical reference there for you on the channel. All right, so we've covered, I think we went really far on the horse race aspect of this, even though we're kind of like, oh, everyone's talking about Biden and Trump. But I think we broke it down in a way that might have been a little bit helpful, a little bit different in the sense that we understand that Election day is going to be chaos, and then there's going to be chaos after that. Every media commentator who's not tied into the the mainstream, whatever you want to call it, the legacy media, they're all pretty worried. People are worried, they're concerned. Trump does seem to be doing a little bit better. I think you and I had a conversation about why that might be with some of the stuff that continues to go on in various places around the country. I don't think the peaceful protests have been helping Joe Biden all that much. Biden actually had to come out and distance himself from these so-called peaceful protests. He said, "Come on, man. I'm not into this. I'm not into riots. What do you think? Come on, man." And then the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris, came in right behind and said, well, listen, these protesters, they're here now. They're great. They're going to be here after the election. I mean, they can't have it both ways, number one. There are people in the suburbs, places, not just in the cities now, but there are people in the suburbs who are arming up, brother. I mean, the gun sales are going through the roof. I'm thinking of getting a firearm probably sometime next year, maybe late this year, early next year. I can see what's coming. What do you think about all this stuff? I mean, this can't be helping the Democrats.
No. Again, this is why I say civil war. There's a divide in the country with those who, some people, I'll say this, we'll focus on MAGA for a moment, okay?
All right.
That whole make America great argument or make America great again argument, okay? Everybody asks to that who's critical. They say, well, when was America ever great? Oh, and a lot of that focuses on like, okay, so when in history did minorities get a fair shake? If you go back to the 50s, we still had segregation.
Yeah.
Okay, so where was America great for everyone other than you white people? Okay. Here's what most people are talking about when they're talking about making America great. There was never a point in time where America was perfect.
Right.
Okay?
True. Good point.
Yes, we can pinpoint at one point in time we had slavery. At one point in time we've had Jim Crow. At one point in time we had the segregation. At one point in time we had the Rodney King type things. Okay? There's bad things we could point to all throughout our history. But as a society as a whole, people had more pride in themselves. People cared more about each other. People had respect. Even though this could be debatable, you could say men were chauvinistic in the sense they wanted the women to stay home. They also, in a lot of ways, had more respect in some ways of women, where there was this old word you never hear anymore. We hear it a lot in the South, chivalry.
Oh,
that's something you don't hear about anymore, where a man respects a woman, does things like open the door for her.
You're a sexist. Wow.
You don't see this stuff anymore. Now, I'm not saying that a woman, now understand, I'm not saying a woman can't open a door for herself, but it's a gesture. It's a gesture of respecting the opposite sex. You see what I mean? You don't see these things. And there's a lot of people who think we were a better, more moral society. And I want to go back there. I want to go back to where I could get a job with a pension.
Oh, yeah.
I want to go back to a time where I had a job and didn't have to work multiple and could buy a house and a car and put food on my table at night.
Yeah.
But I can't do that today. That is what people are referring to when they're talking about the whole Make America Great Again thing. So you've got this faction of folks who have these blue collar issues and can remember a time where, yes, things weren't perfect, but as a society, families were better, households were better, income, even counting for inflation, was better. Okay. But today, it's not. And I want to go back to that place. We can take these other things you want to fix and add that into it. Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
But I want us to be a more, I don't want to sound like the old man here, but the more moral and wholesome society. So that's where a lot of people want to go. But then you've also got a lot of folks who've become the product of the society that is here today.
Correct.
They're not the society from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Nope.
They're the society that our modern content and our social media and our television programs and our music have created. It is a rebellious society. It is people who do not want to live with a level of accountability. Okay.
True.
And that's why pivot back to the whole thing with Roe v. Wade, for example. You brought up third trimester and all that.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
The only thing that bothers me when we get into the first trimester stuff is when I see someone who just irresponsibly running around just screwing the town.
I gotcha.
If you're a town bike, you've got to understand something here, okay? This thing you might enjoy doing has a purpose.
Consequences, too.
Exactly right. That purpose is reproduction.
What?
Now, it might feel great, but it's meant for reproduction.
Dude.
So nature is taking its course here. And so, yes, your body, you're right, but it's also your right to practice some responsibility. It's also your right to understand what happens when you do this is meant to make children.
Yes.
It's also your right to understand condoms don't cost a whole lot and you can go to clinics and get birth control. So if you're going to be this irresponsible with your actions, that's my whole issue with this has always been, there's never been, in my opinion, another part where you could do something completely irresponsible and dumb and avoid paying the price of the consequences. Okay?
Yeah.
When Johnny Cash wrote a song and said, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die.
Yeah.
Okay. Guess what followed that action? He was on a train to prison. Okay. When you do something dumb, consequences come with it. But it's not just with abortion. It's our society as a whole. People look at that as saying, I should be able to do what I want to do, and there should be no consequences. So you see it with a lot of the argument from a lot of modern people when it gets into abortion, but you also see it with their arguments about why we don't need the police. This big outrage about why they want police gone is because someone was more than likely doing something that brought attention to themselves and made a cop go, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then instead of being calm and letting this situation peacefully resolve itself, had to be a bad, tough guy here and make a scene and try to argue and fight with the cop. For example, Rayshard Brooks, when he ran from the cop with the cops on taser and turns around and points it at the cop, might be a reason he fired on you at that point, considering you had about 30, 40 minutes of interaction and he didn't even draw his gun previous to that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no one wants to take responsibility. And that's why there's so many people. It's not because they're racist. It's because they see society that one group thinks is great and we should have more of, and the other group says, no, we've fallen and we need to go back to where we were. Yeah. And what's going to happen is the farther and farther and farther they drift apart, sooner or later the match will light, and that's when we're going to end up with a civil war.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you nailed something really important that political channels don't talk about because they don't. Okay, and again, the two things that you really hit on are basically morals like how you were raised as a human being, and morals aren't just like loving all people and being a tolerant person. That's nice. That's a nice thing that you can love people and be tolerant. The other thing though that's part of morals is your own personal responsibility to yourself
Yes.
and others. Okay. And if you're living a life, all right, that is inconsistent all the time, and you're expecting, like, people want to get bailed out. All right. Oh, I made a mistake. I spent too much money. I maxed out the credit card. I want a bailout. All right.
Yep.
Student loans, people, okay, maybe they got, I empathize because a lot of people, my wife's one of them, got really bad advice and they were told just take a loan out.
Mm-hmm.
There are consequences though. The government holds the loan over your head now for the rest of your life. Is that stupid that you can't declare bankruptcy? Absolutely. Maybe that's not the greatest example, but again, there are examples all up and down where people are always looking for, I mean, you're on these shows with these guys that say, hey, what do you think about free this and free that, free healthcare and free college? And theoretically, I'm thinking maybe, I don't know. We need to have a debate, but I would say, you got to pay your own way in life. And I understand that you mentioned the whole, what it used to, one income, what it used to do compared to what it can't do now.
Right.
That's a big problem. You know why that's the way it is? Because we keep printing our way out of problems.
Inflation, baby.
I was arguing with a Tulsi supporter, nice lady. I made a comment that I think about 90% of the people saw and liked, and these bailouts, they went to corporations and they didn't go to individuals. And I'm like, my wife got a $1,200 check. Okay, so I got one too. We both got them. I don't know if I deserved a $1,200 check, but I got a $1,200 check. I took the money. I used the money. So, I mean, I get it. The corporations got it too. And I was right there arguing with her saying they shouldn't have got it either. And then she mentioned the Fed. And she said, well, the Fed did this. And I said, stop. The Fed did what? The Fed shouldn't have done anything. That's the problem. And her head, you could tell like it was starting to explode as it plays into what you were saying about we're conditioned now. Oh, well, what's next for me? What's next? They need to give me this. Oh, well, yes, the lockdowns create, and this is another distinction, and we can argue about COVID-19, but the government said we are locking you down. So you can no longer go to your job. Your restaurant is going out of business. Sorry, we'll send you a few checks to try to keep you going. Eventually, they're not going to be able to keep doing that. All right. Absolutely. I don't know why, because they keep printing and keep doing, and they use this monetary theory and so forth. But this goes back to, please give me, and it's this whole, it's not just victim mentality. It's like, please take care of me. Please take care of me. I can't do this. And yes, the government at times has screwed up creating a problem, and you can sit there, and I've said this before, I'm like, I can understand why people in the Green Party, for instance, believe that we should get all of these things because the government has screwed things up so badly. But the argument stops there for me.
Right.
The argument stops there. I still see the individual as tantamount to pulling oneself out of circumstances or having more control. And the more you allow them in, the more you're going to be subservient to what they want you to do. Okay? And there's no way around that philosophy for me. As much as I think blue collar people and the working class of this country deserve more in the sense that they're forgotten about. The bailouts, proportionately, yeah, everybody who was too big to fail got the money. They got it, and here we go again. Well, I'll tell you what, Charles Anderson, you're too big to fail. I'm not talking about your waistline. Talking about, that would be me. I'm talking about the fact that what you do is important to the country. All right? There are millions of people around this country that are equally important, and this is a populist argument. This isn't crazy. So I would say, yeah, I mean, if the government was going to really just be, I guess, proportional in trying to at least be fair the way they gave this money out, I would say, yeah, you want to give it to these people that you've locked down. I will say that. I'm okay with that. But that's not a long-term strategy to resuscitate the American economy and to bring us back to peace and prosperity. I lived through the 1980s, brother. 1980s. I know some people who lived through the 50s talk about the 50s were a great time to be an American. People had pride. People had a work ethic. Families were thriving. Yeah, there's tales of women. You hear the people mostly on the left saying, the housewives were all doing Percocets and stuff because they hated their lives and so forth. I think that's a crock. I think that's a bunch of BS, all right, compared to what we're seeing now for substance abuse and all of that. And people suicidal. 1 out of 4 people right now in teenagers are suicidal or have had suicidal thoughts. Okay, I don't think your housewife in the 1950s with her nice big Chevy Impala or whatever it was out in front of the driveway, I don't think she was all that suicidal. The 80s, we had fun. There was money. There was jobs. We weren't at war with anybody. We had a little stuff with Grenada and all of that crap, but come on, really?
Yeah.
Compared to the stuff that's going on now where we're fighting in 6 different places, it's a different world. It's a different world. And I'll let you talk, but I mean, I saw this little documentary on 9/11 because I was typically every year I try to find something that I hadn't seen on 9/11. And you mentioned this, what triggered this. You mentioned to me how people used to interact with one another. And this guy, impromptu, probably had, one of them old school handheld cameras that they had, video cameras back in the 2001 era.
Yeah.
Was walking around New York City after the first plane hit the tower. And he's walking around and he's just getting everybody's like reactions, groups of people, and the horror on their faces and the way people were interacting with each other. I looked at my wife and I said, we were different. And it wasn't just because of 9/11. We were different people. Like, we cared about each other. We were genuinely concerned, and not just like the cancel culture and the Twitter keyboard warriors. None of that had happened yet. So we were all like still connected to something. And when we saw this, we were all mortified. We didn't know why it was happening. We were all angry too. We wanted to get these guys. We wanted to stop this from happening, and we were collectively united. How long did that last for? Not very long. Right. In fact, the politicians.
Just enough.
Yeah.
Just long enough to get us into another war.
Yeah. Well, I was just about to say that rather than seek, the proper course of action, which would have been the target. And we did initially. Bush said, yeah, we're going to go get the terrorists. All right, we went and got the terrorists in Afghanistan, right? Oh, Saddam Hussein, he's got weapons. What? How does that have to do anything with Trump, by the way, was a guy back in those days. They have him on tape saying a lot of crazy crap that people thought he was insane about. And he ends up being right.
Yeah.
We ain't those people, though. We ain't the people who were concerned about one another. Now we are very disconnected. We are very cold. We don't have those interactions, and this COVID-19 thing has made it even worse now, because now we're we've got masks on and we're distancing and we're, we can't go here and the table's got to be over there. If you want to sit at this restaurant, you can't sit over there. It's like, holy crap. When it feels, I'm going to say something controversial here. It feels like it's by design. And that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, I not even focusing on just necessarily COVID.
Yeah.
I do believe that a lot of this division is, I do believe it is being done by design, honestly. Yeah, we came together, and arguably, potentially, if something like that were to happen again, we could possibly come together. But our problem is because of the way the world is and the way we live today, if we come together, we never stay together.
Yeah.
That's the whole issue. I mean, granted, think of it like this. When we had the Civil War, all the states came back together. And even though there was still some issues,
tension,
right?
Yeah.
It took how long for us to really become so polarized again once we kind of rejoined each other and get this point.
Right.
But after like 9/11, it happened within just a couple of years. That's where society's gone to, There used to be all these community interactions, people interacting with their neighbors more, things like that. People are just polarized now. I mean, you people all the time, they never interact with a next door neighbor.
Right.
They tend to their house and their yard. They don't go out and see the neighbor and say, "Oh, hey, how you doing?"
Yeah.
There used to be a lot of these things, and I saw it a lot growing up, where friends would bring things to each other. For example, people that would grow gardens would bring people that they knew and were friends with. Now, we're not talking family. We're talking about maybe church members or just friends.
Yeah.
Bring you stuff from their garden, bring you fresh vegetables and things like that too. You just don't see things like that anymore. You're absolutely right. It's a different world.
Yeah.
And when you touch on with the bailout aspect, you're absolutely right. A big problem with the cost of living has come from all the inflation. And a big part of why we have to print so much money is because we've wrecked our job market.
Yeah.
Where people could get good jobs and replaced it with the war machine.
Yeah.
Now, most of the jobs are a lot of mediocre jobs, and our education system isn't getting people trained to do a lot of the manufacturing jobs that are in the country today, which is why we're getting them, but having trouble filling them now.
Yeah.
So you've got all these different problems that contribute to a lot of the economic issue for the average American today. But if the government is going to do bailouts, if they're going to do it, without a doubt, it needs to be focused. If we're going to do businesses, let's focus on small business or even small, they could be national retail chain, but something that might affect blue collar folks. You know who doesn't need that bailout? Goldman Sachs, Wall Street, all these companies who just make billions and billions of dollars all the time. They don't need this the same way. So, for example, I'll tell you a few things that I've noticed, and I'm sure other people can cite their own personal examples since the whole COVID issue and the shutdown, right?
Yeah.
Right here in my backyard, I've lost Yogurt Mountain. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but my God, they had great frozen yogurt. I mean, it was delicious. But they closed because of COVID.
Okay.
Pier 1 Imports.
Yeah, gone.
The whole chain is going.
Yeah.
And there's like 4 days left. So me and my wife are going to have to go over there before they're completely closed, see what we can round up from all this, because we used to like to go. I didn't go a lot, but it was nice. And we liked some things in there. My wife liked a lot of the oils and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But no, it's going completely. Lebo's, which was a Western store. Every now and then you might see me wearing a Lebo's hat in some of my videos, like a baseball cap.
Yeah.
They had one right here in Spartanburg, Western store, gone. They've closed down because of COVID now. So all these smaller stores are closing up because of what's taken place with the way COVID was handled, because of the way we just shut everything down, right?
Yeah.
That being said, something that's not focused on, which this is going to be something that are really the right wing focus on. This is something you don't hear left wing folks talk about very often. property value. You know what happens when all these stores go empty? Have you ever been on Main Street where it's like the old small town Main Street? Used to be full 50 years ago.
Not anymore.
Used to be a place people would go and they thought, wow, this looks beautiful. But if it was old fashioned and it's all brick buildings and little small shops on Main, see, people don't go to that anymore. So when you go to that area of town, how does it typically look? Very run down. The property value went. Why? Because all those stores closed up. So what's going to start happening to all the strip malls that once used to be shopped at all the time if all these stores start going empty? And in the current economy, people aren't making money to try to invest in starting a business, so they're not going to be able to get the capital to start a business. They're not going to afford rent. Therefore, it's going to sit there and be a big, ugly, empty building.
Yep.
Then all the neighborhoods around the area, because there's no stores, there's no attractions, now your property value goes right down the drain with it.
Yeah.
So this hurts the average American more than a lot of people would even realize. It's not just people are going to lose their jobs. It's not just that this is going to cost more, and it's not just change or going out of business. This is going to affect your property value, and that's something I don't think many people are taking into consideration with all these closings.
No. I mean, a lot of things you're talking about are things that, and again, you talk about the left versus the right, and I never hear people on the left talk about things like this, and I'm, I instinctively, because I voted for Trump the last time around, and I'm still wrestling with, I want Jo Jorgensen. She's out there, and she's a good sort of compromise vote, or I didn't vote for either two, because it's kind of a cool thing to say I didn't vote for either one of them. They're both bad. But I'm just looking at it from the perspective of people who care about things like property value, people who care about jobs, okay? People who care about, kind of pulling yourself up a little bit by your bootstraps when you're down. You don't hear that message from Joe Biden. It's like, I'm coming, me and Kamala are coming, we're going to take care of you. It's going to be great because Trump's going to fundamentally destroy the character of the country. All right. Whether that's true or not, are we going to be worse off? It's like the COVID thing. Is the cure for the disease of Donald Trump going to be worse than the disease of Donald Trump? And that's what people have to consider in this election. And I get it. You don't like his personality. I get it. Orange man bad. I get it. He tweets a lot. His tweets are obnoxious. I don't like him sometimes. I think he's shooting his mouth off too much. I think if he would focus on the things that he's good at, like negotiating and just, because arguably he had some skill sets. You get in there in a room with a bunch of foreign dictators who want to take you to the cleaners. You don't want a patsy. You don't want somebody who's just going to push you over and or let you be, basically be allowed to be pushed over. I like that about Trump. I like somebody gets in there and is a brawler. And you mentioned the Republican Party, and I think, honest to goodness, you see like the walk away movement from the Democrats. Was it Brendan Straka there, the guy, homosexual guy who is just like, I'm not voting for Democrats anymore. I'm just not doing it because none of these things that I keep hearing are true. And I want to go where there's prosperity and there's, and that's a pretty substantial movement. A lot of, LGBT folks, a lot of minorities, a lot of different people have woken up a bit to the fact that maybe, this identity politics and this constant sort of, just sort of bringing down the country, just saying, like you said, America, was it ever great? It was great. Was it perfect? No, but it was good. It wasn't bad. Like I got to, again, I lived through the 80s. I can tell you it was a good time. Actually, even the 90s, I would say, with Clinton and Gingrich kind of like, one guy trying to get credit, the other guy trying to get credit, two massively huge egos. And they basically worked it out where, okay, we'll give Newt some credit over here. We'll give Bill some credit over there. And they got a lot of stuff done. The crime bill, one thing that people don't like. But the 90s were fairly, we had Desert Storm. Guess who that was? That was George H.W. Bush, As soon as we got rid of him, Clinton, he wasn't trying to start wars. He had a little fake bombing of an aspirin factory when they found out he and Monica were doing. That was the old wag the dog thing. I don't know. I think one or two janitors might have got killed in that, which is not good. But the bottom line is it was a wag the dog, look over here, even though I just got caught doing this. But for the most part, that was a pretty tranquil decade. It was 9/11, and then all hell breaks loose. Then we preemptively do this and do that, and we screw the whole thing up. All that to say about Trump, though, getting back to Trump is still comes off to me as an outsider. He doesn't fit anybody's. He's playing the GOP playbook in a lot of ways, for sure. All right. But what I'm saying is we need more candidates, and the Democrats too. Tulsi Gabbard is an infiltrator. She's definitely somebody who is using the D to say, okay, I'm running as a D, but I'm anti-war. I'm pro free speech. I'm pro, free Julian Assange. I'm against the surveillance state. I'm against big tech monopolies. Go on and on, Tulsi. Keep preaching it, So, we're going to wrap up here soon because I've got to get out of here. But I think that I hate to say it, Charles, as much as I'm enthusiastic, I'd love to get and break the duopoly. It's going to take a while to do that. And I still think there can be a concerted effort, as you said, from the ground up to do it. Absolutely. But to do it fast, you might put yourself out there as a D or an R and say, okay, I know in the past, traditionally, you don't even have to explain that to people. Just say, these are the things I think about. These are the things that I think are important, what I'm running on. And you go down a list of things. I wrote a list of like 8 or 9 things that both the left and the right agree on the other day. And I get a lot of retweets and stuff on Twitter. And I was like, so why don't we have more people running on these issues and bringing the country together?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the one thing that I would say is, and this is not to say that I don't like how Tulsi handled business as in her strategy.
Yeah.
I really admire the calm attitude that Tulsi had, or what she would refer to as aloha. Okay. Yeah. I like it. But if we're going to look at this strategically, becoming the outsider in the Democrat or the Republican Party, you have got to take a page from Donald Trump's book.
Yeah, I agree.
And most people are going to sit there and listen to that and say, oh, God, we don't want to be anything like Donald Trump. Okay, well, don't be like Donald Trump. Just focus on hitting the party. You've got to. You've got to hit on saying, look, I'm not going to be that party. Bernie Sanders ran as an outsider, but told us Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump. Tulsi Gabbard ran as an outsider, but never really got down in the trenches with the guy who was the anointed one, Joe Biden. Sure, she took her shots at Kamala Harris, and she did a great job. I mean, she took a lot of people down. Pete, Kamala, Tim Ryan. She did great at tearing those people apart.
Yeah.
But you needed to focus on the one we all knew was the anointed one.
Right.
Okay. Ron Paul, I'll switch parties for a moment. Ron Paul, 2008, 2012, ran 2 times. Really, in my opinion, was an outsider. Was not successful. Why? Because he had good policy, but you've got to come across as, honestly, a little bit of a loudmouth. You've got to come across as an outsider. You've got to just make that noise so everybody goes, What? What? You've got to grab the attention. You've got to make it, you've got to grasp that media attention. Because otherwise, the mainstream media they're in the pockets of the Democrats, and Fox News is in the pockets of the Republicans.
Correct.
And remember, of course, this entire time we had these election cycles, it was keep Bernie off TV in 2016.
Yep.
Promote Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Okay. Likewise, on Fox News side of the equation, there was a lot of Fox News hosts who tried to really go after Donald Trump.
Yep.
And tell you that, no. He can't beat Hillary Clinton. So, see, we need one of these guys. This is why we need Marco Rubio. Okay? See, you see what I mean? So you've got to, if you're going to run as the outsider, you've got to be a true outlaw outsider.
Yeah.
You can't come in and say, look, I'm actually going to give you policy, but I'm going to sit here and rub elbows and give hugs to all these people.
Yeah.
You've got to come out throwing attacks like Trump did. You've got to really show everybody else on this stage are nothing but a bunch of ass clowns. So don't vote for them. Vote for me.
Right.
And if you don't make that difference, the mainstream media is going to bury you. That's why you get no attention like Tulsi Gabbard got.
Yeah. Yeah. You make a good, the aloha thing. You're right. You started and ended and it was really good the way you did that. I love the aloha thing because I think that peace is a good thing. That, it's like the calm Zen center, it's like, that's what she put out there. But, and Tulsi was at her best when she was the queen of warmongers, did that tweet, the legendary tweet. And the other day she had a kind of a tweet about the Netflix show that I won't mention by name because I don't want to get demonetized again. But I'll tell you what, that's Tulsi at her best when she's got the combat boots on, and it wasn't enough because she needed, in order to break through, she needed to, use some of those martial arts moves that she has. And, she kept him quiet a lot because, again, I think her natural, and most people want to be peaceful. Most people.
Agreed. Yeah.
But in politics, you're right. Trump is a bull in a china shop. He knocks all the plates over. He runs through there. People say, oh, how uncouth. How hear this. How unpresidential. Really? Really? Is that all that important? Or like the George Wills of the world? I remember in 2016. Oh, what a Neanderthal. And that's the New York Times. It's most of the chattering class in D.C. and up and down the East Coast and wherever. And they're all, oh, he's just so, the Wall Street Journal. Oh, is he going, and I'm thinking to myself, who's going to speak for the truck driver, the bus driver, the cab driver? Who's going to speak for those people?
Well, and just be honest for a moment. Even though the average American does not pay that much attention to politics, the average American has been smart enough to figure this out, that what they see on TV is a facade. Yeah. They understand that behind closed doors, you don't act the way you do when you're on a television camera. Right. For example, this whole, I need someone who acts presidential.
Yeah.
Most people, okay, Wall Street Journal editor, New York Times writer, okay. Most people understand that's not who that person really is. And so for a lot of people, being more of yourself and just telling the truth and not putting on that facade wins brownie points with the average person, because they say, it actually sounds like an average person is up there because they're saying what we've been thinking for a long time.
Correct.
They're saying, all you, bloated, what's the word I'm looking for here? Someone that uses really, really big words all the time. Pompous.
Pompous, yeah.
Pompous. Yeah, pompous. All you bloated, pompous blowhards, okay, are doing nothing but just pushing platitudes and cliches, and you're going to do nothing.
It's Mayor Pete.
Exactly my point. So when people hear that, they're like, yes. When I listen to that guy talk, I know he's full of crap. And finally, someone said it.
Yeah.
Okay. that makes a huge difference to people. And if people think that we're wrong when we say this, okay, I want you to tell me something. How many times did you hear JFK or Richard Nixon or any of those folks when they were on TV cuss? Now go use the power of YouTube.
Yeah.
Look up leaked audio clips of recorded conversations that took place when cameras weren't rolling. Tell me how many times you hear them use every cuss word in the book, basically.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Lyndon Johnson was brutal. I know
Cuss
that.
like sailors.
Yeah.
I mean, that there you go. They're different people behind closed doors. Most people understand that. Most people are tired of this facade of, oh, our president just has to be this upstanding bougie type of person. No. Most people know better than that.
Right.
And while, yes, it may be good for appearances and might resemble like some upper level leader or whatnot, and to people's point, yeah, you don't want some big loud mouth when it's time to calm the country down and bring us together.
Yeah.
That's where you kind of have to have both. That's why Tulsi Gabbard's method would be perfect for what we've got right now.
Yeah. And it's one of, I think we'll just wrap up on this. The reason that, again, I've kind of done 360, 180, whatever with Tulsi Gabbard is, she comes out tweeting when she's great, when she's taking on establishment stuff. And she does it in a way that is fearless, and Trump does it too, by the way. There are going to be people that don't like what I'm about to say, but Tulsi and Trump, there are things that they have in common. They don't take crap when people are throwing BS at them. Now, Trump tends to be more of a showman and throwing red meat out there, and sometimes he's always attacking this CNN, this and that, and sometimes it gets a little tedious, But I would prefer somebody who had a little fire in the belly, and Trump, he's relentless. I mean, the guy's schedule is ridiculous. The left never wants to give him any credit for anything when he does something right. And again, I'm not advocating that people run out and vote for Donald Trump. That's for you guys to figure out. I would say if I had ranked choice voting, and I'm going to leave it here, and then I'll let you wrap up, Charles. But if there was ranked choice voting in Florida for president of the United States, my ballot would look like this: Joe Jorgensen, Donald Trump, Howie Hawkins, Joe Biden.
I would agree with that statement. That'd probably be the exact order I would have to go in as well. Joe Jorgensen's definitely going to be number one. Donald Trump, there's so many people out there, they have made the statements and they've said, if you voted for Trump last time, I'll give you a pass. But if you voted for Trump again, you're irredeemable.
Really? Based on what?
Referencing back to the divide. Most people, because of the way mainstream media covers Donald Trump, look at what they can see on the outside, but don't see what most people see deeper in that Make America Great Again thing.
Yeah.
Most people heard him talk about building walls, deportations, Muslim bans, and they all said, oh, no. Everybody else kind of said, yeah, he's a loudmouth. I think he's just running his mouth. Let's see how much of that he actually does. But in the meantime, yeah, it's time we start focusing on making our own country great once again, because right now we're letting it fall to pieces.
Right.
And like I said, modern society, a lot of younger folks just don't understand that because of how we're living today. But that being said, we need a Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Honestly. We need someone who can speak softly but carry a big stick. Okay.
Yeah.
And in Donald Trump's case, there ain't no doubt he's carrying the big stick, but he don't speak softly either. He's a loudmouth with a big stick. He's just a downright bully. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's been my whole point, is that Tulsi did a fair job.
Yeah.
But in the climate that you've got today, you've got, if it's just even to get through the primaries to the general. See, that's the trick. That's the key to getting somewhere. If you can get to the general election with that outsider message, your odds are you're going to win.
Yeah.
Okay. But you've got to get through that maze of the primary season. And with the mainstream media and the party working against you, you're going to have to do something that they just can't ignore.
Yeah.
And you've got to break out the glass ceiling. And the only way that I've seen that someone successfully did that was when they just went balls to the wall, 100 mile an hour, and just let it all out there like Donald Trump did. When he did that, they put him on TV. People heard what he was saying. More people flocked to him. He made it to the general. He beat Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
But we've had other people who arguably would have had better policy than Trump. Ron Paul, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders. They did well, could not navigate the maze of the primary field.
Right.
And so you've got, if we're, again, but in the meantime, I still say we need to focus on getting third parties more involved at the grassroots level so that we can create an alternative to Democrats and Republicans. Yeah. But as far as the presidential elections go, my message is, I'm going to agree with you at this point, Dave. If we could chip away at the foundation, we can halfway deal with having a Democrat or Republican as president, because they're not able to just constantly railroad stuff through Congress and the presidency and just screw the American people over. If you chip away at Congress, then the president is going to have to start really playing ball regardless of what his policies are, because he doesn't have a Congress or a Senate that's just going to fall for his whims.
Yeah.
There's going to have to be wheeling and dealing done for votes to get or bills and whatnot to get passed.
Yeah.
So we can settle for that Democrat or Republican president, but if we're wanting outsiders to infiltrate, they're going to have to study the textbook on how to get the job done in the meantime.
Yeah.
And while we're doing that, we need to focus on grassroots, and that is the best path forward to me to getting third parties potentially more wins. That and actually getting some ranked choice voting passed across the country.
Amen. Amen to that. And that will wrap up our long-winded but entertaining podcast for today. Don't forget to check out my friend Charles and the Lone Wolf podcast. If for nothing else, for the Joe Biden impersonations, which right now we need more of that. We need a little bit more comedy in this as we head toward November 3rd and possibly some civil unrest. We'll try to be a little diplomatic with the phraseology there. But until Charles and I meet again, or we're on with Reed, I wish you guys a great day, and thanks for tuning in.